Appeals. I will be presiding over tonight's meeting. Due to declared state of emergency in the nation, in Ohio, and in the township, the director of the Ohio Department of Health issued March 12th, 2020. In response to the COVID-19 emergency, this meeting is being convened telephonically. The agenda for today's meeting is available on our website, www.andersontownship.org, under the news section. Click Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals to meet via teleconference May 7th to review information for case 6-2020 BZA, case 8-2020 BZA, case 9-2020 BZA, and case 10-2020 BZA. The board will accept public testimony via phone or video during the public hearing for case 6-2020 BZA, case 8-2020 BZA, case 9-2020 BZA, and case 10-2020 BZA. Before public testimony is provided, I will read an oath and you must swear in before speaking. We ask that all participants mute their phones and only unmute if speaking. If you are going to speak, please state your name and address. It is also helpful to speak directly into your phone. At each of our board meetings, we encourage attendees to complete a sign-in sheet, including their name and address. If at some point during or after the meeting, you would like to electronically sign in, simply send an email to pginty@andersontownship.org. That's pginty, PGINTY @andersontownship.org. Before the meeting begins, I'd like to identify the appointed Board of Zoning Appeals members that are participating in this meeting. I am Jeff Nye. I am the Vice Chair presiding tonight. The other members with us are Steve Haber, Paul Shekels, Paul Sion, Scott Lawrence. I guess let me pause to ask, is Scott only participating in the case that he participated in at the last meeting?
Since John has stepped out, we can have Scott hear all the cases.
Scott's going to hear all of them, okay. And our alternate Earl Carell is also on the line, correct? Okay. Other personnel are joining the meeting via phone, including Brad Bowers, Jay Ginty, and Sarah Donovan, the staff, the planning staff. Each of us will do our best to remember to state our name before speaking so that those joining via phone can follow along. We thank you for joining us and your patience and understanding during these unprecedented times. This meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals is hereby called to order. This board was established pursuant to section 519.13 of the Ohio Revised Code by the Anderson Township Board of Trustees to provide administrative relief to any person or entity adversely affected by the Anderson Township zoning resolution. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence?
Here.
Mr. Shekels?
Here.
Mr. Haber?
Here.
Mr. Sion?
Here.
Mr. Nye?
Here. Thank you for attending this teleconference meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Now, I'll outline our procedures. If the appeal is presented by staff, then the appellant will present its case after being sworn in. The board members may then ask questions of the appellant. All persons supporting the appeal will be permitted to testify one at a time after being sworn in and recognized by the chair. When those persons supporting the appeal are finished, those opposed to the appeal will then be permitted to testify and or ask questions of the board after being sworn in and recognized by the chair. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Any changes?
No, the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Steve Haber moves.
Paul Sion second.
There's a motion and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence?
Here.
Mr. Shekels?
Here.
Mr. Haber?
Aye.
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye.
Don't interpret my here as anything but an I. I'm sorry. Sorry. Mr. Chair, Steve Haber here. Typically when we are swearing in people during the meeting, we're also swearing in staff. And I know that we're kind of out of order here, but I was just wondering if you wanted to take this opportunity to swear in staff en masse.
To get through the approval of the last couple of minutes, and then I'll swear staff for all of the cases, and then we'll swear individual applicants or opponents as needed. All right. The second item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for January 2nd, February 6th, and March 5th, 2020. Are there any additional amendments to any of those minutes from the board or staff? Hearing none. The minutes of the prior meetings.
Steve Haber, so moved.
Is there a
Scott Lawrence, second.
I do have a side note. I can agree to all the others, but I'll abstain on March as I was not present at that meeting.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
This is PJ Ginty. Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Shekels,
Aye.
Mr. Haber,
Aye.
Mr. Sion.
Aye as to January and February and abstain as to March.
Thank you. And Mr. Nye.
Aye. The minutes approved. All right. Before we move into the cases on the agenda, I will swear in the staff, and as a reminder, when the appellant or any proponents or opponents of the matter are going to speak, I will swear you in individually before you speak. I think an en masse swearing of people by phone would be too convoluted. So all staff that are going to testify, please raise your right hand. You tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is a continuation of case 6-2020 BZA. Will the staff please present the case?
Yes. The first case tonight is case 6/2020 BZA, and one of the Board of Zoning Appeals members present tonight was not at this meeting, so I need to check with Paul Sion. Have you reviewed the minutes from the last meeting, and are you comfortable hearing this case?
Yes, I've reviewed the minutes and the video of the past hearing, and I'm comfortable reviewing this case.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the applicant tonight is Michelle and Paul Delera, who are the property owners of 2930 8 Mile Road. The property is zoned AA residence, and the applicant is requesting to construct an accessory structure in the front yard where it's only permitted in the rear yard. I'm going to cover the proposed development and case history together since they're kind of one the same. But last month, this case was continued so that staff consult with Anderson Township Special Counsel on if the use variance would be appropriate for the proposed development. And speaking with counsel, staff determined that the use variance was not applicable to this case. Generally, use variances are only used whenever there's no reasonable economic return for a property, and staff determined that there was an economic return for this property due to the fact that we issued a zoning certificate for a single-family house in 2019. So, for that reason, the previous applicant, Joe Huseman, decided to withdraw his offer on the property. The property owners are moving forward with the variance for the accessory structure in the front yard, and the applicant is now requesting a smaller size of an accessory structure. So previously, the proposed size was 3,200 square feet, and now the proposed size is 1,200 square feet. We covered this at the last meeting, but there's currently no house on the property, but township staff did issue a zoning certificate of house in July of 2019. It is Mr. Delaire's intention to sell the property if the variance is approved in accordance with Article 5.2A8. Residence must be constructed on the property after the accessory structure in the front yard is constructed. Should variance be approved. Like I said, I covered most of the history, so I'm not going to go too far into this. Here you can see an outline of the property on 8 Mile Road. You can also see that Bridle Road is in this area as well. Here you can see an aerial of the property. You can kind of see where there's a pad at the top where the house was approved. You can also see where there's somewhat of a gravel driveway leading up to the pad on the top of the property. And here's a topography map of the site. You can see that it's extremely steep both in the rear and front yard, with somewhat of a flat area up at the top where the house was approved. Here's the proposed site plan that the applicant submitted. You can see that the driveway here is going to be paved over to the proposed structure. And again, the size of the accessory structure has been increased from what was being proposed last month to a 30 by 40 structure at 1,200 square feet. Here's a closer view of that site plan. And here are some pictures the staff took while on the site. You can see this is going up the gravel driveway towards where the house was approved. You can see there's a gate at the front of the property. Looking back towards 8 Mile Road. The property is heavily wooded, and so some of these next few pictures are all areas where the accessory structure is proposed. Like I said, you can see it's heavily wooded. This is looking back towards 8 Mile Road. And some more pictures of the area where the structure is proposed. And this is almost as you're up at the top where the house is approved, looking down the driveway. And this is almost up to where the flat area is, and then this is the flat area of the property. And then here you can see, this is a picture of across the street. It was brought up at the last meeting that there was a sewer project going on in the area, and so we got a few pictures of that. And this is what that site looks like. And then this is looking from that site back towards the property on the other side of 8 Mile Road, so you can kind of get a sense where the accessory structure would be. And then this is a view of 8 Mile Road looking south. We'll move on to staff findings. Staff is of the opinion variance could be substantial. The proposed accessory structure is set back approximately 65 feet from the right-of-way and is situated on a hillside above 8 Mile Road with a substantial vegetative screen consisting of mature trees. It is unclear how visible the structure will be from 8 Mile Road. Staff has concerns that the variance is based on speculation, as the property owner has no intent of building the accessory structure and intends to have the variance in place for an eventual future project. However, the permitted size of the accessory structure on this property is 7,400 square feet, and the size of the structure that's proposed is 1,200 square feet. The essential character of the neighborhood would not be altered, and adjoining properties would not suffer a substantial detriment to variance. There are 4 legal non-conforming accessory structures in this vicinity on 8 Mile Road and on other properties. The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of governmental services. The owner's predicament could be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance. However, the applicant has indicated that the proposed location of the accessory structure is desired due to the steep topography of the property. In addition, the applicant has stated that the proposed accessory structure is needed in order to stage construction materials for the future house. This is in compliance with Article 5.2. Staff is of the opinion that the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement could be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance based on the permitted size of an accessory structure on the property, which is 7,400 square feet, multiple legal non-conforming accessory structures in the front yards of other residences in the vicinity of 8 Mile Road, and the need to use the accessory structure to stage materials for the construction of the residence. However, staff has concerns that the variance is based on speculation that the current property owner has no intention of constructing the accessory structure. There is one staff recommended condition should this variance be approved. A single family residence shall be constructed on the property within a year of the accessory structure being constructed in the front yard in order to be compliant with the definition of accessory building or use in Article 6.1 of the Anderson Township zoning resolution. And this is as a reminder that anybody who would like to testify needs to be sworn in first. And I would be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I think the best way to do this is that rather than everyone shouting out questions, turn to each board member in turn. You guys fire off questions. We're going to go through and now, if that's okay. Mr. Hayden, I'll start with you. Do you have questions for staff?
I do. Thank you. Questions for staff. If the board approves the variance, this is your staff recommended condition. Family residence shall be constructed on the property within a year. The accessory structure being constructed. So there's a couple things here that has me concerned. Number one is we're here to provide a variance, and yet your testimony says that the current property owner has no intention of constructing the accessory structure. And if we do, because we are giving a variance, construct the accessory structure and the single family residence is not constructed in accordance with the condition, then what's the ramification? What's what happens if it isn't built?
The house is not built.
Yeah.
It becomes a zoning violation, and it would be enforced like a zoning violation on any property where first let the owner know, and then we would take bring that property into the
So what would be the penalty of the zoning violation?
We would move forward with taking the property through going through to court, and we would, if we would need to, it would be up to the judge, basically.
Okay. The current zoning certificate that you gave on the single family house back in July of 2019, as my understanding is that does not have an expiration. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I am complete with my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to Mr. Shekels. Any question for staff?
No, Steve echoed my one question. Is we're asking for to approve a variance for something that we don't know what it is, and after it's built, we may not have any remedy for the structure, except sorry to the neighborhood. You know, really concerned about that, and that's my major concern here. I also have somewhat of a concern. I don't know if this is a place to express it, that not having even a drawing or a rendering of what that proposed structure would be. How are we supposed to judge its impact on the surrounding community?
Those sound like for the applicant, and I'll invite you to raise them with the applicant in a few minutes. So unless you have any other questions for staff, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sion.
No, that's all.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Lawrence?
Except for, I guess you got the circumstance where what if the person that he say he builds the building and then the person moves in, doesn't like it or wants to change it? What happens after that?
They would be allowed to reconstruct the structure in the front yard in compliance with the zoning or with the resolution from this case and in compliance with the zoning certificate that gets issued if this case is approved. They would be allowed to reconstruct the structure in accordance with that zoning.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up questions based on anything you heard?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Shekels, any follow-up?
No.
Mr. Sion?
Yeah, just to follow up a little bit. From my reading the documents, they're not proposing to actually build it. They just want the permission to build it, and they'll use that as part of the, I guess, marketing for when they sell it. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence, any follow-up questions? Questions. Okay, hearing none, will the appellant or the appellant's representative please unmute yourself, speak into your phone or microphone, and state your name and address?
Jeff, I have everybody muted right now, so I'm going to hit unmute all and see if it could come forward.
Is the appellant or the appellant's representative here for case 6/2020 BZA, Mr. or Ms. Delaria?
Mr. Delara?
I do not, Mr. Delaria on the line. How would the board like to handle this? I think given the unusual nature of these proceedings in the past when an appellant has not appeared, sometimes we have continued, or sometimes we have denied the application for, or denied the appeal for failure of proof. Sometimes I believe we've also taken testimony from other proponents or opponents. Before we turn it over to proponents or opponents, I think I'd like to get the sense of the board as to how we'd like to proceed. Would anybody like to weigh in on that? And again, I'll start with Mr. Haber.
Seems reasonable. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it'd be reasonable if people are on the call, either in support or opposition. I would certainly like to hear that before I decide how we want to move forward, given that the appellant is not present.
That seems sensible to me. Mr. Shekels, any opposition to that?
No, I agree.
Mr. Sion?
I concur as well.
Mr. Lawrence?
I agree.
Okay, then I will move to any proponents other than the applicant in support of case 6/2020 BZA. Is there anyone on the line who would like to be heard in favor of that appeal? On the line who would like to speak in support of the appellant in case 6/2020 BZA? Hearing none, is there anyone on the line who would like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case 6/2020 BZA? Again, looking for anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case 6/2020 BZA. Is there anyone on the line? Okay, none. Does the board have any additional questions for staff? I guess we've probably exhausted them, but I'll give it to you one more time before we decide how to proceed here. Anyone on the board have any questions for staff? Hearing none, I'd like to, we close the public meeting at this point, I suppose, and then decide whether to adjudicate. The sense of the board, Mr. Haber, do you have a sense?
Yeah, I would recommend that we close the public hearing and proceed. And I'm not quite sure, excuse me, I'm not quite sure how to proceed we can either vote on the variance request, or can we not just take any action because the appellant has not appeared?
Why don't we do first things first? Mr. Haber, are you moving to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Yeah.
We have close the public hearing. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Hi, this is PJ Ginty. Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
Mr. Shekels.
Aye.
Mr. Haber.
Aye.
Mr. Sion. Mr. Nye.
Hearing is closed. It's time to deliberate as it is, such as it is. The appellant has not appeared. No proponents have testified today. No opponents have testified today. We could adjudicate the matter at this point. However, given the unusual nature of these proceedings being conducted telephonically, I wonder if it might not be more appropriate to continue this to give them another opportunity to appear and be heard. I think my inclination is to first hear the board's sense on that issue, and then, if necessary, move on to deliberations. Mr. Haber, would you like to start?
I am in favor of continuing the case.
Mr. Shekels, do you want to weigh in?
Same. I concur.
I agree as well.
Mr.
I agree, given the climate, yes.
Is there a motion to that effect from anyone?
So moved. Paul Sion.
Second, Scott Lawrence.
We have a motion to continue this matter until the next meeting and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
I'm here. Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Shekels.
Aye.
Mr. Haber.
Aye.
Mr. Sion. Mr. Nye.
All right. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, we have case -2020 BZA. 1 second to shuffle my papers. This is a variance request to construct a new garage at 7427 Indian Creek Drive. Will the staff please present the case?
Yes, thanks, Jeff. So our second case tonight is case 8, 2020 BZA. Applicant is Amanda and Michael Dunges, property owners of 7427 Indian Creek Drive. The property is zoned AA residence, and the request is a variance request to allow the construction of a new 22 by 32 foot or 704 square foot garage located in the side and front yard area of the property where accessory structure is located. The proposed development again is to construct a 32 by 22 foot garage in the front and side yard of the property, and to be located 7.5 feet from the property line. The history of this case The existing residence was constructed in 1967. The current owner purchased the property in January of 2009. Here is a map of the property that you can see. Here you can see an aerial of the property. Here you can see the topography of the property. In this topography map, you can see that there's quite a large ravine in the backyard. And then this is the proposed site plan. You can see the accessory structure in this area. This is the front and side yard again. And then a little bit closer view of that proposal. And here are some pictures that staff took while out on the property, looking towards the front of the house. This is the approximate location of the accessory structure, where it's proposed to be located. You can see some flags. They're in the ground here, and that is the approximate location that the structure is proposed. Again, another view of those flags where the structure has been marked on the property where it's proposed. Another view of the property. This is looking towards the rear yard of the property, and you can see that slope in the backyard where it drops off quite a bit. And another view of the rear yard where there's, again, a large ravine, very steep. So we'll move on to staff findings. Staff is of the opinion that the variance is not substantial. The proposed garage is going to be under 15 feet in height and in compliance with the size and setback requirements in Article 5.287 of the zoning resolution. The applicant will also be permitted to construct a 3,540 square foot structure in the rear yard of the property. The essential character of the neighborhood would not be altered, and adjoining properties would not suffer a substantial detriment of the variance. This accessory structure is located approximately 175 feet from the nearest residence to the east. The proposed garage will be screened from the nearest residence by existing vegetation and mature trees. The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of governmental services. The owner's predicament could be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance. However, due to the very steep slope, the creek, and the existing vegetation, consisting of mature trees, all located in the rear yard of the property, locating the garage in the rear yard would result in extensive grading and clearing. Staff is of the opinion that the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance based on the distance and screening to adjacent residences, the topography of the property, and the presence of the creek in the rear yard of the property. So again, another reminder about public testimony. Ready to be sworn in. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Mr. Haber, do you have any questions of staff?
I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Shekel?
No, thank you.
Nothing here. Thank you.
Mr.
No questions.
Okay. The appellant or the appellant's representative, please unmute yourself, speak into your phone or microphone, and state your name and address.
Hello, this is Michael Dunges. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. This is Michael Dunges, property owner at 7427 Indian Creek Road, Cincinnati.
Okay. Will you please raise your right hand? You swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please present your appeal.
1 second, I lost you. Yes, so we're looking for additional garage space. We currently have a 2-car garage that is attached to the house that as we've been in it for a little bit now, we've realized is insufficient to children and vehicles and the large amount of lawn equipment that it takes to manage over an acre of heavily wooded and heavily landscaped property. So looking for additional space. As you can see from the topography, the map that was provided, the grade in the back of the yard drops off severely. Would take extensive clearing and probably intrusion into the creek that runs wet behind the property to do anything in the rear yard. So the side yard looked like the best possible space. Pretty common in the neighborhood to have more than a 2-car garage, 3 or 4 plus. Some of the neighbors have detached garages as well. So I feel like it fits in the neighborhood. And the plan for the property is to have it match the existing garage and house as well, as far as the roof line, the materials of construction as well. Also feel like it, it's going to blend in pretty well with the neighborhood, both from matching the house and it's heavily wooded around there, both from landscaping as well as just the natural mature trees in the area, which will shield a lot of it from view. That's all I have.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the board for questions. Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for the appellant?
I have none. Thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
The only question I have is visiting the site, and I know that's the only location you could possibly do that. But do you have a rendering or anything that you told us that it's going to match the character of your existing structure? Do you have any kind of plans or renderings of that?
Not currently, other than my intent is to have it match the almost exactly the structure of the existing garage that kind of sits off to the side of the house, other than it will be a little bit longer. But as far as the pitch of the roof and the cross section of the building itself, it'll match almost identical to the existing garage.
All right, that's all my only question.
Thank you. Mr. Stein, any questions for the appellant?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No questions.
Mr. Haber, any follow-up?
None. Thank you.
Okay, we will now take testimony from any persons who support the appeal. Remember, you first must be recognized and sworn in. Please unmute yourself and speak into the phone or microphone. State your name and address, any affiliation to the case. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support of this appeal? Please identify yourself.
My name is Brian Osterday.
Okay.
7436 Indian Creek Road.
Okay. Your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us anything you'd like to tell us.
I live catty corner to the property. I see absolutely no reason that it can't be built there. It will maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. It will look fine. It's somewhat hidden even from the road the way it's going to sit. The applicant, as he said, has the intention of building it with the same roof pitch and look to it. I have no concern whatsoever. It literally sits across the street from my house.
Okay. Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for Mr. Osterday?
I have none.
Mr. Shekels? Mr. Sion?
Nothing here either.
No questions. Thank you.
Does anyone else hear like a boinking sound? Is that me?
Is there? No. Somebody down on the phone. Anybody?
Ghost in the machine.
Where is
I had a skyline today. Not.
Cyber
attack.
Sorry.
Do you think it would help to meet anyone?
Does anyone have any idea what to do about that?
Sarah, can you mute all the microphones? I mean, mute everybody?
Normally with who's talking,
Yeah.
and I'm going through and muting everybody, but I'm not sure.
Still happening.
We have to fight through, I think. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of this appeal? Anyone else on the line in support of this appeal? Okay, hearing none. Is there anyone on the line who would like to speak in opposition? Anyone on the line in opposition to case 8? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Steve Haber, so moved.
Paul Sion, second.
The secretary, please call the roll.
This is PJ again. Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Sheck,
Aye.
Mr. Haber,
Aye.
Mr. Sion,
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye. The case is closed. Next item on the agenda, discussion of the case. Mr. Haber, would you like to start us?
Yes, thank you. I'm in favor of granting the variance for a number of reasons. One, I cite staff findings, the topography of the property is going to prevent being in the rear yard. We have testimony from adjacent neighbor in favor. We heard no one in opposition, so I am in favor of granting the variance.
Thank you. I'm sorry, were you finished? I think he was. Okay. Mr. Shekels.
I'm in favor of it. My only concern is not him rendering or anything of the facility. You know, we're looking in them to build something, you know, to correspond to the structure. You know, that's a faith we have to make if we're going to continue with this. Location is the only place you can do it. You know, we have some neighbors. You know, so those are my comments.
Mr. Sion.
I have no comments. I'm in agreement that I'm in favor of approving the appeal.
Mr. Lawrence.
I also agree with Mr. Haber in looking at the aerial photo on the website. Actually, the house next door has the same setup. Also has a detached garage off to the same side of the house. So I have no issues.
Mr. Haber, anything to add?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I have nothing to add myself. I think I agree, particularly with what Haber said. I think in response to what Mr. Shekels said, there isn't a plan. I'm pleased to hear that the sound appears to have disappeared.
It's the
When I start
feedback.
talking, right?
It's the feedback when from Scott's computer.
Scott.
I've been muting people on and off, and yeah. Sorry, Scott.
All right. In response to Mr. Shekels' concern, the appellant has testified that he intends to match the existing house. I think that is good enough for me. Is there anyone on the board like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
There's a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Paul Sion. I'll second.
There's a motion to grant the variance and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
This is PJ Ginty, Mr. Lawrence.
He's muted too.
Is it my computer again?
It is.
I don't hear it. What am I doing wrong?
Are you using headphones or anything, Scott?
I'm just on my laptop.
We can fight through it, I guess. I don't know what else to do.
Scott, let's just mute it when you're not talking. But we have a motion and a second. I believe the secretary is calling the roll.
Aye.
Mr. Shekels,
Aye.
Mr. Haber,
Aye.
Mr. Sion,
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye. Okay, that concludes case 8. Next item on our agenda is case 9. Case 9-2020 BZA is a request to allow a conditional use for an adult daycare center. Will the staff please present the case?
Yeah, PJ Genty's been working mostly on this one. PJ, would you like to present this, or would you like me to present?
This is PJ. I can present this one as long as the feedback's okay.
Yep, it sounds fine.
All right, thank you. This is case number 9, 2020 BZA. The applicant is Joe Mayernick and Lindsay Strunk on behalf of JW Congregation LLC property owners. The location is at 7577 Forest Road. It is on B residence. The request before you this evening is a conditional use request to allow an adult daycare center. Daycares are a permitted conditional use in a single-family zoning district per Article 4.4 I-5 of the Anderson Township zoning resolution. The definition of an adult daycare center is as follows: a place that provides community-based programs designed to meet the health, social, and related needs of functionally impaired adults during daytime hours. The applicant is proposing interior modifications to the existing 4,944 square foot building with no changes to the existing parking area, which consists of 85 parking spaces. The only change was proposed to the exterior of the building site, adding wall signage on the front of the building. The applicant is also requesting variances for the setback of the building, which is 30 feet where 50 feet is required per Article 5.4 I-5 of the zoning resolution, and for the setback of the parking area, which is currently 10 feet where 25 feet is required per Article 5.4 I-5 of the zoning resolution. The history of the property: a zoning certificate was issued for the former Jehovah's Witness building and church building and signage in 1989, and the building was then constructed in 1991. In 1997, a zoning certificate was issued for the existing entrance gate and fence in the front yard. In 2009, a zoning certificate was issued for 5 temporary storage trailers to be used during an interior renovation, which was completed in 2009. The church ceased operations a few years ago, and the building has been vacant ever since. In February 2020, the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals granted a conditional use request to allow a 16-unit group home assisted living facility on the property. However, the applicant decided not to move forward with the project. This is the property map showing the existing location of the building. Just to the right of that is Anderson High School, and then to the north and south of the building are 2 residential properties, and then to the west of the existing building is 5 Mile Road area. This is the existing aerial map of the property. So the applicant again is not proposing any changes to the site. including the parking lot. As you can see, there's a large parking lot located on the property with the building located in the front of the property. The site is relatively flat. And this is the proposed site plan that was received from the applicant. Now, I do want to make a note that this is the original 1989 plan that we were able to pull the zoning certificate from the Jehovah's Witness Church. At the bottom of the plan and the bottom of the screen, there's a white border there where it says no changes are planned. Now, is our understanding they will be adding replacing wall signage on the property. But other than that, there were no other exterior changes proposed by the applicant. And this is the existing building, looking at it from Forest Road. Again, looking towards the southwest, over towards 5 Mile Road, and looking back towards the existing parking lot. This is the back of the building, looking towards the southeast, towards a residential property. This is looking to the northwest, showing the existing fence that is located on the neighboring property, as well as the vegetation. Now, this does show the parking lot as well, which is located only 10 feet from a residential property. This is looking directly to the west towards 5 Mile Road. See, there is some existing vegetation on the south side of the property that consists of mature trees. And the parking lot at this time is not striped, and there's grass growing. This is looking to the east directly towards Anderson High School. And this portion of the building is only 30 feet away from the residential property to the south, where 50 feet is required. So that's the other variance that the applicant is requesting this evening. Again, looking towards the south, this is looking towards the east. The residential property to the south is located to the right, and the existing building located 30 feet away from that property is located on the left side of this picture. You can see Anderson High School in the background there. We're going to go through the conditional use staff findings first and then address the variance after that. To authorize by the grant of a special zoning certificate after public hearing, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall make a finding that the proposed conditional use is appropriate in the location proposed. The finding shall be based upon the general considerations in Article 2.12 D8, as well as the designated specific criteria for specific uses, in this case a daycare center, which is contained in Article 5.4 I3. We'll go through the general considerations first. The first general consideration is spirit and intent. The proposed use and development would comply with the spirit and intention of the zoning resolution and with district purposes by meeting the conditional use standards, with the exception of the requested variance to condition E. The proposed adult daycare center will be less intense than a church. Additionally, there are other non-single family uses in the vicinity, including Anderson High School right across the street, Anderson Hills United Methodist Church, and Wellington Orthopedic and Sports Medicine. No adverse effect. The proposed adult daycare center would not have an adverse effect upon adjacent property or the public health, safety, and general welfare. The existing building has been in the existing location since 1991. In addition, the applicant has indicated that all activities at the proposed adult daycare center will be located inside the building. Protection of public services. The proposed adult daycare center will respect natural, scenic, and historic features of significant public interest, as the proposed adult daycare center includes no changes to the existing building or site.
Consistent with Anderson Township plans, the applicant is requesting a variance to condition E of the conditional use standards. As the existing building is located only 30 feet from the property to the south, where 50 feet is required, and the existing parking lot is located 10 feet from the property to the south and north, where 25 feet is required. In addition, the number of parking spaces on the property is substantially greater than the optimal required parking spaces. The existing parking area consists of 85 spaces, where the optimal required parking spaces is 8 in accordance with 5.3 E2 of the zoning resolution. The conditional use is in accordance with the township's comprehensive plan. The project is consistent with the following goals and initiative in the people and housing and quality of life chapters in the 2016 comprehensive plan. These state that the township should provide a variety of businesses and housing options to meet changing demographics and market demand, promote programs and partnerships with other agencies that will contribute to the health and wellness, community stewardship, spirituality, and education of the community. This property is designated for an institutional use on the future land use map. Staff feels as though the proposed adult daycare center is consistent with this use classification. Now, these are the conditional use findings. So they were required to meet the adult daycare center is required to meet conditions E, G, H, I, J, N, E, R, S, and Y. So we'll go through each one of those. The first condition is E. Setbacks from any adjacent residential property line shall be a minimum of 50 feet for all buildings and 25 feet for all parking areas. The existing building is located 30 feet from a residential property to the south, and the parking area is located 10 feet from the nearest residential property to the south as well. The applicant is applying for a variance to this condition. D. Use shall have direct access to a collector or arterial street. This is in compliance as it is located on Forest Road. H. The vehicular use area shall be located and designed so as to minimize impact on the neighborhood. The applicant has indicated that there will be no changes made to the existing parking area. However, the applicant has stated that their incoming and outgoing traffic will not affect current traffic flow. The number of parking spaces on the existing property is substantially greater than the optimal required parking spaces. The existing parking area consists of 85 spaces, where the optimal required parking spaces is 8 in accordance with 5.3 E2 of the zoning resolution. I. Any use for which drop-off or pickup of children, residents, visitors, products, or emergency vehicles is a common occurrence shall provide for the separation of incoming and outgoing vehicles, thus to not impede other traffic. The applicant has not provided any plans that show proposed pickup or drop-off areas. However, they have indicated that incoming and outgoing traffic will not affect current traffic flow. J. No building shall be located within the floodway, and this is in compliance. N. The architectural design and site layout of the structure and the location, nature, and height of any walls, screens, and fences are to be compatible with adjoining land uses and the residential character of the neighborhood. While there are existing mature trees on the southern property line, a 6-foot high privacy fence on the northern property line, staff feels additional screening may be needed. Additionally, without any modifications to the existing building, staff is unable to determine if the proposed facility is compatible with the residential character of the neighborhood. G. This relates to signage. So the condition is double I. One sign permitted subject to the sign standards located in Article 5.5 F3. The applicant has indicated that they are proposing to install a new wall sign and to replace the existing sign. The wall sign is permitted to be a maximum of 12 square feet per the zoning resolution. R. Outdoor playgrounds, tot lots, exercise areas, and pools shall be fully enclosed by a fence. The applicant has not proposed any outdoor playgrounds on the property. S. All exterior lighting shall be directed away from adjacent residential properties. The applicant has indicated there will be no lighting changes to the site. However, the applicant did not submit a lighting plan, so staff is unable to determine if the exterior lighting is currently compliant. And why? The intensity of the particular use shall be evaluated with regard to the location, size, and configuration of the tract. Staff is of the opinion that the proposed intensity of the adult daycare center is appropriate for the location, size, and configuration of the tract. The applicant has stated that the proposed adult daycare center will have a maximum of 40 people in the building at a time. The proposed adult daycare center will be operated from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. Now moving on to the staff findings for the variance. So this is for condition E, and that was the first condition. So condition E states that setbacks from any adjacent residential property line shall be a minimum of 50 feet for all buildings and 25 feet for all parking areas. Staff is of the opinion that the variance could be substantial. The existing building is located only 30 feet from the residential property to the south, and the existing parking area is located only 10 feet from the residential property to both the south and the north. However, there is existing vegetative screening between the existing building and parking area and the surrounding residential properties. In addition, the parking requirement for daycare centers is one space for every 5 students. The applicant has indicated that there will be a maximum of 40 people in the building at a time, so the required amount of parking spaces will be 8 spaces, while the applicant has currently proposed 85 spaces. The essential character of the neighborhood may not be altered, and adjoining properties may not suffer a detriment as a result of the variance. The applicant has stated that all activities will take place inside the building and that a maximum of 40 people will be in the building at a time. The existing building has had a 30-foot side yard setback since it was constructed in 1991. Furthermore, the proposed adult daycare center will be a less intense use than a church. The number of parking spaces on the existing property is substantially greater than the optimal required parking spaces. With the additional 77 parking spaces, there is a large amount of impervious surface on the existing property, which may in turn cause stormwater drainage issues for surrounding properties. Variance would not affect the delivery of governmental services. The owner's predicament can be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance. However, the applicant has indicated that they would not be able to operate the business if the variance for the building setback was not granted. The applicant can stripe the parking area in a way that would comply with the 25-foot setback to residential properties requirement, or they can also remove impervious surface to come in compliance with condition E. Staff is of the opinion that the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance for the existing building setback of 30 feet based on the existing vegetative screening, the number of people using the daycare center, and the fact that the building has been located at the existing location since 1991. However, staff is of the opinion that the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement may not be observed by granting the variance request for the existing parking area setback of 10 feet based on the amount of impervious surface and number of parking spaces located on the existing property. Should the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the conditional use and variance request for the adult daycare center, staff recommends the following conditions. Number 1, a revised site plan shall be submitted showing the proposed parking area striping and designated pickup and drop-off areas to be in compliance with conditional use standards E, H, and I, and that plan shall be approved by staff. Number 2, a revised site plan shall be submitted with the proposed wall sign in compliance with Article 5.5 F3 of the zoning resolution and shall be approved by staff. And the third and final recommended condition, a lighting plan shall be submitted in compliance with Article 5.3 K of the Anderson Township zoning resolution and approved by staff. This is a reminder for anyone in the audience who is going to give public testimony, if you can state your name, address, and then be sworn in. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are some from the board.
Thank you. Mr. Haber, any questions for staff?
I do not have any, Mr. Chair, and would like to commend staff for their excellent report.
Mr. Shekels, any question for staff?
I'll echo Mr. Huber's comment.
Mr. Sion, any questions for staff?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence, any questions for staff? Mr. Lawrence, any questions for staff?
Can you hear me?
There he is.
She had me muted. She's trying to keep me out of the meeting. No questions, thank you.
Questions for staff. Okay. Let me see here. Will the appellant or the appellant's representative please unmute yourself, speak into your phone or microphone, and state your name and address?
Joe Marinick, 7967 Ayers Road.
Mr. Marinick, will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please tell us anything you'd like to tell us about your appeal.
The reason that I'm involved here is because I was approached by the ladies about having a adult daycare center, which is in significant need in this geographic area in the way of supply and demand. They've been looking at facilities, and I've agreed to purchase the building to have them put forth the usage of an adult daycare center. I think it fits well in the community, and the things that you're looking for the staff to approve, and by the way, they did a great job. You know, the lighting and so forth, we can work on whatever you need to do there. I can't move the building, unfortunately. It's been there, and that's the reason we need part of the variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Haber, any questions from Marinick?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
No, thank you.
Mr. Simon?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No, thank you.
Okay, I also have none. Mr. Marinick, is there anyone else there with you who wishes to be heard on this?
Well, I believe Lindsay Strunk, who is you know, heading the project. I'm just buying the building and supplying the money. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, so Lindsay, anything you want to say, go right ahead.
First, Ms. Strunk, before you begin, will you please give us your full name and address?
Sure thing. My name is Lindsay Strunk, and my address is 127 Paddle Wheel Drive, New Richmond, Ohio 45157.
Okay. And before you go on, will you please raise your right hand for the oath? Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, please proceed. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely would like to kind of piggyback on what Joe said. We started this program, my business partner and I, because my business partner has an adult daughter with Rett syndrome, and we realized that there are no other day programs for individuals with disabilities within 20 minutes of Anderson Township. We are the only day program in the Cincinnati area that would offer the continuance of life skills and an education-based program. All the other programs that we've looked at that are in the Cincinnati area and mostly in Ohio are recreation and leisure-based programs. So this would provide education after these young adults graduate at the age of 22 and then don't have a place to go besides a group home or to, go to a rec-based program. So definitely needed here in the community. And like PJ addressed earlier, we're not changing anything on the outside of the building. It would stay very much residential and maintain a very nice look. I think we could contribute a lot to the community. So thank you.
Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for Ms. Strunk?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, we will now take testimony from anyone on the line who is in support of the appeal. Remember, you must first be recognized and sworn in. Please unmute yourself and speak into the phone or microphone. Is there anyone on the line?
Hasn't said anything.
I'm sorry, we heard someone. Is there anyone on the line who would like to speak in support of the appellant in case 9-2020? I thought I heard someone before, but now I don't hear anyone. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support of case 9-2020? Okay, hearing none. Is there anyone on the line who would like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case 9-2020? Asking again for anyone on the line who would like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case 9-2020. Anyone? Okay, hearing none, I think that it concludes the public testimony. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Steve Haber, so moved.
Is there a second?
Paul Sion, second.
We have a motion to close the public hearing and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
This is PJ Ginty. Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Haber?
Aye.
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye. Proceeding to deliberation, Mr. Haber, would you be so kind as to start us off?
Be glad to. Thank you, sir. In favor of granting the conditional use as well as the 2 variances. I think staff did a tremendous job itemizing what the township's concerns as well as their recommended conditions. I really like the idea of restriping the lot so that we move cars away from the property line. I'm not so sure that we can get them to rip up the concrete. I mean, it certainly isn't going to exacerbate any drainage problems since we're not adding any additional paving. The last thing I wanted to say was in February 2020, when we granted the conditional use to allow the 16-unit group home, there was a substantial addition that was proposed within that conditional use request for the bedrooms, so to speak. So here we have an existing building that's going to be repurposed without additional construction. Forget something else. So I am in favor of granting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shekels?
I'm completely in support of this.
Okay. Mr. Sion?
I'm in support as well. I have no other comments.
Mr. Lawrence?
I agree with everyone else.
I also am in support. I think looks like a great plan. Seeing no other discussion, would anyone like to make a motion?
Steve Haber, Mr. Chair, we've got the conditional use as well as 2 variances, and a motion could be made to include all 3. I didn't know if you wanted to piecemeal those and take those one at a time.
I think based on the discussion I heard, we can probably knock them all out in one fell swoop.
Okay. Mr. Chair, regarding case number 9-2020 BZA, I move that we grant the conditional use for an adult daycare center, as well as a variance for the setback of the building, which is currently 30 feet where 50 feet is required, and a variance request to allow a setback of the parking area of 10 feet where 25 feet is required. I'm going to include staff's findings. I'm including staff's recommended conditions. And that the daycare center be opened within 1 year.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Haber, this is PJ Ginty. I had a question on the motion for staff clarification. Within your motion, you said that you would be in favor of you made a motion to grant the variance for the parking setback as well as the building setback. But in staff's recommended condition, we state that a revised site plan shall be submitted showing the proposed parking area striping and designated pickup and drop-off areas to be in compliance with conditional use standard E, H, and I. So I just didn't want those 2 points to contradict themselves in your motion.
That was my intention. Based on your recommendations that they restripe the parking lot in order to conform with the required parking setback. However, I'm not in favor of requiring a removal of impervious surfaces as a part of that variance.
So I make sure I understand this. The motion is to grant the conditional use subject to staff's recommended conditions, grant the variance for the building location, and to grant the variance request for the setback of the parking area, in other words, the concrete, so long as it is striped in such a way that the striping and parking stalls or spots would comply with the setback requirement. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, because I believe we need to grant a variance to allow the construction to remain.
Mr. Ginty, understand that condition?
I do. I believe the staff recommended conditions would then satisfy Mr. Haber's point. Because we do mention that the parking area striping be in compliance, so it wouldn't require the removal of impervious surface.
I'm sorry, you cut out right when you said something about impervious surfaces and I didn't hear it. Could you say just that last half sentence again?
Yeah, so we would just look to require the parking area striping be at least 25 feet from the residential properties rather than the impervious surface, the concrete, be 25 feet.
Okay, and I hear Mr. Haber saying that that is what he intended by his motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Paul Sine. I'll second the motion.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Haber?
Aye.
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye. Okay. Moving on to item number 10, on our, I'm sorry, number 9 on our agenda is a variance request relating to a fence at 2810 Deer Haven Drive, case number 10-2020 BZA. Will staff please present the case?
Yeah, I will be presenting case 10. So the applicant for case 10, 2020 BZA is Benjamin Kennard and Elizabeth Kirby, who are the property owners of 2810 Deer Haven Drive. That property is zoned A residence. The request is to allow a 6-foot-high privacy fence in the side yard to remain where only a 4-foot-high, 75% open fence is permitted. The proposed development is the applicant has built a 6-foot-high privacy fence in the side yard without zoning approval and is requesting a variance to allow the 6-foot-high fence to remain in its current location. The applicant would also like to build a new side door to the house and would like the side door to be enclosed within 6 foot height. So this is a couple pictures of staff took while out on site. This is in the rear yard looking towards the front yard. You can see the fence here in this picture. You can also see a large tree in this picture as well, which is in the approximate location of where a fence would be permitted on this property, a 6-foot-high privacy fence. Here you can see the property map where the property is outlined in red. Here you can see an aerial picture of the property. And this is a topography map. So this is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. And as you can tell, the fence varies in height, and the applicant has provided the height and the approximate location of where the fence is. So again, the highest portion of the fence is 6 feet tall, and the shortest portion is 4 feet 7 inches. This is inside yard area. Back to some pictures that staff took while on the site. This is the front of the house. You can see the fence in the side yard in this picture here. This is another picture of the fence that staff took. You can see here how the fence varies in height to run with the topography. Here's another picture of the fence looking from the side yard and almost in the front yard. And again, here's a picture from the rear yard. The fence does connect to a 4-foot-high chain link fence. And again, you can see the large tree in the approximate location of where the fence, a 6-foot-high fence would be permitted. And here you can see the area that I believe is proposed to be have a new side door to the property. Another view of that fence. You can see here again where I believe the approximate location of the future side door is going to be enclosed within the fence. Another fence or another picture of where a 6-foot-high fence meets with the 4-foot chain. So moving on to staff findings, staff is of the opinion that the variance would not be substantial due to the distance from Deer Haven Drive being approximately 86 feet. Fence varies in height due to topography, with the shortest portion being approximately 4 feet 7 inches high, and the highest part being 6 feet high. In addition, there is a mature tree in the location where the fence is permitted to be in the rear yard. The essential character would not be altered, and adjoining properties would not suffer substantial detriment as a result of the variance. The previous 6-foot-high fence that fell into disrepair was located in a similar area, and the new fence is encroaching slightly into the side yard so that a side door can be installed in there. The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of governmental services. The property owner's predicament can be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance. The applicant would be permitted 6-foot-high privacy fence in the rear yard of the property, although the applicant has stated that they wish to enclose a side door within the 6-foot-high fence. Staff is of the opinion that the variance. Staff is of the opinion that the spirit intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed by granting the variance due to the distance from the street, the variation in height, the existing tree where the fence is permitted to be in the rear yard, the applicant's desire to enclose a side door within the 6-foot high fence. So again, a reminder about public testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Haber, do you have any questions for staff?
Yeah, just one question. Mr. Bowers, you said that the previous 6-foot high privacy fence that fell into disrepair was located in a similar area. To be a little bit more pointed with that, did this 6-foot high fence repair or replace the previous fence that fell into disrepair?
I believe it replaced it. It was previously in a permitted location in the rear yard, I believe. But this fence was a replacement of that.
What I heard you just say was that the previous 6-foot high fence was in compliance with our zoning code, and this one does not. Am I correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. No more questions. Thank you.
Mr. Eccles, any questions for staff?
No, that answered the question that I had.
Mr. Sine, any questions for staff?
No, I have no questions for staff. Thank you.
Mr. Law, any questions for staff? Mr. Lawrence, any questions for staff?
No questions. Thank you.
Right.
Sorry.
I do have one question, I think. I know there's a tree near that back corner of the house, but assuming for sake of argument that tree wasn't there, if that fence came off the back corner of the house, it would be a rear yard fence and it would be compliant. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's my only question. Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up questions based on that?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shaw?
No.
No.
Mr. Law?
No.
We will now take testimony from the appellant or the appellant's representative. Please unmute yourself, speak into your phone, and state your name and address.
My name is Ben Kennard with Liz.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Cuppy.
And we're the property owners of 2810 Deerhaven Drive.
Okay. Will you please right hands? Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Okay, please present your case.
Over the past 2 years, the side fence, as stated in the appeal, fell into disrepair. There for a while, we were propping it up with some support on the backside. Last spring, I went ahead and replaced it with the intent of basically bumping it out a little bit due to putting a door on the side of the building for a recently remodeled kitchen. And prior to installing the fence, I did ask our neighbor immediately to the left of our building, mid-eye, and I asked him, hey, do you mind if I extended this out at all? And he's like, hey, I don't mind at all. Just go ahead and keep the fence on your side, and that's all I care about. And so I kind of did it unknowingly that it was in violation of the previous fence that was there. I guess the previous fence was on the back corner of the building, and due to that mature tree that had grown up, it started pushing it out, and some of the fence posts had rotted out, so it was in dire need of replacement. From the street view, up against the house, it is 4'7", and then it does taper off to a 5'10" from the street view. Then from the street view to the existing chain link fence. There's one high point at 6 feet, but then it ends at 5'3" where it meets the chain link. That's pretty much all. Do you have anything?
Oh, no, I guess just, we just thought we were doing a good thing, replacing a rotting fence that wasn't really safe. It was literally being propped up by sticks when we moved in. So yeah, I guess our bad for not checking more into that, but yeah, I think everything's already been covered.
Thank you. Mr. Haber, any questions for the appellant?
Yes, sir, I have one. When is it your intention to install this side door?
Well, we started a kitchen remodel about a year ago, to the day almost, and we basically expanded our kitchen into our dining room, and the intent is to put a side door in there, I'd say within the next 6 months to a year.
Sorry, my daughter's talking, honey, you can't
Um, okay, thank you.
Mr. Shekels, any questions?
Where did the existing fence tie into the house?
The existing fence tied into the rear corner of the house.
Was it a stockade fence or was it a chain link fence?
It was a 6-foot high privacy fence that was previously zoned, had variance for it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Sion?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No questions.
I do have a question. I'm looking at the street view, the photograph we have from the street. And one thing that kind of jumped out at me as I visited the property the other day, the base of the fence is quite a bit lower than the street to my mind. Do you have a sense of what that height difference is? Is it 2 feet below street level? Is it 4 feet below street level? Do you have an estimate?
Yeah, it's approximately 3 feet below street level, I'd say, on the left side, and up against my property line in the eyes. And then it would be approximately 2 feet or so up against the house, I think, below street level.
Okay, that was my only question. Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up questions?
Just one, sir. The reason for locating the fence is so you could put a side door as a part of your kitchen remodel. And I guess I'd like to have a good date as to when that project's going to be done.
I would too.
Yeah, my wife's been asking that for almost a year now, 6 months.
We're almost done with the kitchen. We just have like painting and drywall work and like a backsplash to put in. So I guess when, I don't know.
Are you willing to commit to a 6-month time frame to get that door installed?
I could commit to that.
Can I ask why? I'm just curious why that, like, why a date would be needed for that?
Well, because that's the reason that was stated in your written testimony as to why the fence was located where it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So in my mind, I'm willing. For me, and we haven't talked about the other members of the board yet, but I'm leaning towards granting it for the reasons why you requested. Okay.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, within 6 months to a year, I could get that door put in place.
Well, that's a little bit different than what I asked.
Yeah, like you want like an exact date of when I can buy?
For me, I would appreciate a commitment that states when that door, I mean, I mean, for consideration of granting the variance for the reason that you've requested for installation of this door, I think it's important that the board would understand and get a commitment from you as to when the door is going to be installed.
Yeah, let's go October 24th, yeah, let's go like, I just said October 24th because it was 6 months from the picture, but we could go 6 months from today.
November 7th.
November 7th.
6 months.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nothing more, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shekels, any follow-up?
Nothing more.
No, nothing more. Thank you.
No more questions.
We'll now take testimony from anyone in support of the appellants. Is there anyone on the line who would like support of the appellants in case 10-2020? Asking again for anyone on the line who would like to speak in support of the appellants in case 10-2020.
I'll
Yeah,
speak in
so,
support.
This is Lauren Hillier at 2801 Deerhaven Drive.
Okay, was it Hillier?
Yes, Hillier.
Hillier. Ms. Hillier, will you please raise your right hand?
Yes.
You swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please tell us anything you'd like to tell us.
Yeah, I just want to say that it does look 100% better than what was there. I also want to make a point that they live, I mean, it's a dead-end street, and there's probably only, I don't know, maybe 15 houses past their house, and it's a dead-end street. And their fence is on the side towards the dead end. So really only those 15 people that live in those houses really see the fence. And it looks 100% better. It looks, you know, I have no issues with it. I haven't, or everyone we have talked to have told them what a great job he did and that it looks great. And so I just want to say that, yeah, I like it, and I think they should be allowed to keep it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for Ms. Hillier?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
None, thank you.
Mr. Sion?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hillier. I believe I heard at least one other person.
I will go.
Yes.
My name is Susan Castile.
Susan Castile?
I live at Casteel. I live at
go ahead.
7886. I live at 7886 Woodstone, and I walk the neighborhood frequently. And
Sorry,
as Lauren said,
before you go any farther, I'm sorry, Ms. Castile, can you please raise your right hand to be
go
sworn
ahead.
in? Thank you.
Yep.
Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead.
So I walk the neighborhood every night, and as Ms. Hillier said, on the left side of their house, you don't really see it except for the 15 houses beyond, and it's very well done, and it's also very unobtrusive to like anybody else who's looking at it. So I definitely think they should keep it, and they've done a nice job with all of the updates that they've done thus far.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for Ms. Castile?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
None.
Mr. Sion?
None, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castile. Is there anyone else on the line who'd like to speak in support?
Yes.
Yes,
I heard another woman and I heard a man. Let's take the woman first, please. Your name?
Heather Matthews,
Heather Matthews. Ms. Matthews, what's your address?
2865 Deerhaven Drive.
Will you please raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to third what the other lady said. I am one of the few houses past them into the cul-de-sac, so I do pass their house every day. And I love what they've done. They've done a very good job of fixing up their home, and the fence looks great. It does not stand out at all. It doesn't look like it's any more towards the front of the property than anybody else's. And I support them keeping it and not having to redo all their hard work.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haber, any questions for Ms. Matthews?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
None, but I need to make a point. I'm not sure what's going on here, although it shows my laptop being charged. I just got a 19% usage. If I go out, I'll call back in on my cell. Okay.
Let's try to wrap it up before then, but thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Lawrence? Mr. Lawrence, any questions?
So,
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Matthews. I know there's at least one other person. I heard a man's voice. Who else do we have?
Yes, this is Greg Burning and Jen Iben. We are the next door neighbors at 2804.
Okay, will you please raise your right hands? Do you swear or affirm that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Was there a second person with you there, sir?
Jen Iben, yes.
Yes.
Do you also swear or affirm? And you swear or affirm you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
We would just like to echo everybody that's already spoken. Basically, we have the same reasons as all of they've said, but we just since we are the next door neighbor, we wanted to put our 2 cents in as well.
Reiterate how well they did with the fence, and it's not an eyesore at all. They did a great job building it, and it looks so much better than the previous fence that was there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haber, any questions?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels?
None, thank you.
Mr. Sion?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No, thank you.
Okay, continuing on, is there anyone else on the line who would like to speak in support of the appellants in case 10-2020? Asking again, is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of the appellants in case 10-2020? Hearing none, I'll move on to opponents. Is there anybody on the line who would like to speak in opposition to the appeal in case 10-2020?
Yes, there is.
Okay, your name, sir?
My name is Emmett I, 2816 Deer Haven Drive.
Mr. I, will you please raise your right hand?
Yes,
Swear or
sir.
affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, I do.
I'm sorry, Mr. I, can you please spell your last name for me?
Just 2 letters, E-Y.
Got it, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, number one point I'd like to make is that when the neighbor was starting to do the fence, I did, to the best of my recollection, tell him that he should check with the township about putting the fence where he has placed it right now. I knew there was a restriction as far as fences going beyond the rear of the structures. Okay, point number 2. At this stage of the game, there are 3, from what I know, there are 3 points of egress from the house right now into the backyard. They have a patio door, they have a walkout basement that goes up some steps to the backyard, and there is another door that is either from the garage or the laundry room. So my point is, how many points of egress does this house need to come into their backyard? The previous fence was fine until it rotted, et cetera, et cetera. If they would have replaced that fence with the structure they have now, except within the qualification of the zoning, I would have no issue with it whatsoever. It would mimic what is on the opposite side of the house, on the south side of the house. This side facing my property is not stained to match the side on the south side. That's one thing. It's an eyesore as far as I'm concerned. Then why do we have zoning rules if all we have to do is just make an appeal and say, well, gee, I want to put this fence here. I think I'll just go ahead and do it, and then I'll file an appeal, and we'll get all these other neighbors to say, it looks great. I can't disagree that it looks great if they would have put it where it should have been. So those are the points I would like to make. as far as the fact of wanting to come out a side door on the north side of the house in 6 months, I think you better hold them to it. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Haber, do you have any questions for Mr. I?
None, thank you.
Mr. Shekels, do you have any questions for Mr. I?
None, thank you.
Mr. Sion?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No, thank you.
Mr. I do have a question. Just to make sure I understand, you are the neighbor to the north, is that correct?
That is correct. I am the one that overlooks that structure.
You're right there. Okay. I thought I heard, and I'll ask the appellant this again in a minute. I thought I heard the appellant say that he had a discussion with the neighbor on that side, by which I assume he means you. Did you guys discuss that before the fence was installed?
We did not have a discussion. We may have had a conversation, but not an in-depth discussion about it. As to the best I can recall, is that I told him he should check with the township before doing anything, because I knew that the structure should not be put beyond the end of the house, the back of the house.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell me what is on that side of your house? I know the driveway is on that side, the garage is on that side.
That's correct. I have a landscape bed going from the corner of my garage all the way to the back of my house. There is an air conditioning heat pump unit also there about 2/3 of the way back.
Okay, I see.
And then in between.
I'm sorry, Mr. I, are you just on the phone or do you have video here?
No, I'm on a phone.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep telling me.
That's okay. Between the landscape bed and the fence then is just grass.
Okay. Staff has just put up a photograph that they took of the property that shows as if the photographer were standing where the fence meets the house and looking at your house. And so I'm looking at the wall where the garage must be. There's a chimney. And then to the right of that, which I guess is the east of that, there is, looks like some wood panel siding and then a glass block window in a lower level.
Correct.
Is that a walkout basement or something like that?
That is a storage area underneath of an addition to my house that was expanded our family room years ago.
Okay. I see a second level with one window on it. Can you picture what I'm talking about there?
Second level with one window.
Second level of your house has a window that faces this fence.
Okay, that is our bedroom window, one of our bedroom windows.
Okay. Okay. I think that is all the questions I have. Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up questions for Mr. I?
I do not have a question. I would echo what he echo and reiterate what he stated, that if there is a condition that's put on as a result of granting this variance, that we should enforce it. I totally agree with him. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Shekels, do you have any follow-up?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Sion, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. I. Is there anyone else on the line who would like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case 10-2020? Anyone on the line who would like to speak in opposition? Asking just one more time, is there anyone else on the line who would like to speak in opposition to the appellant in case 10-2020? Hearing none, I'll ask the appellant again. While I would ask you to direct your comments to the board, do you wish to rebut or respond to anything that Mr. I said?
I just wanted to let the board know that it is my intent to stain the fence to match the fence on my other side that I replaced a few years ago. Typically, you wait a year for treated lumber to cure before staining. So just about now is a year since the fence has been built. So I do plan on staining it to match the fence on the right side of my establishment. And I think that was the only thing that I had on my end. Liz, do you have anything?
I guess we must have just totally not viewed the conversation the same. And I wasn't present at the conversation, but Ben had thought that when he asked Mr. I about the fence, that he was totally fine with it. We're kind of shocked that that Mr. I called in, because we thought that he was okay with it. So yeah, so I mean, I guess we're just we thought we think it looks a ton better than what was there. We're doing, our house we purchased as a foreclosure, and we're doing our best to update things little by little as we can, to get things, you know, looking nice. And you know, Ben put a lot of work into it, and I think we thought we were doing a good thing, not a bad thing. And like he said, we have all intention of staining it, but you can't stain it until the wood cures. And then I guess also, did you mention that there's other fences like that? That even matters? Probably doesn't, but
yeah,
there's, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I guess I'm just kind of shocked right now. I did not expect that. I thought we were doing a good thing, we were not trying to upset anybody in any way.
Thank you. Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yes, I would like to know from the appellant as to when the fence in question was installed.
It was installed, I'd say, April 2019.
Been there longer than a year.
Yeah, just about a year.
Okay.
Yes.
No more questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, can I add one thing?
Sure.
The reason we haven't stained it like exactly at a year, I literally was just sending my husband pictures of how, because I was thinking of changing the other sides, and then they both matched to a new stain color. So we were kind of deciding that, and then like to update the landscaping on that side of the house, because we thought that landscaping on that side of the house has not been very nice since we moved in. So we were looking at options of the landscaping and the colors for the fences. So we were just actually been discussing that this week. So it's not because we're planning on doing it, that's all.
Mr. Haber, any question, any follow-up on that?
None. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Shekels?
None, thank you.
Stein?
No, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No, thank you.
Okay, I have none as well. I think that concludes the public testimony. Did I hear someone else there?
I think it's just your echo, Mr. Nice.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Paul Sion.
Is there a second?
Second, Paul Shekels.
We have a motion and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
This is PJ. Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
Mr. Shekels.
Aye.
Mr. Haber.
Aye.
Mr. Sion.
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye. The public hearing on case 10 is closed. We move on to discussion. Mr. Haber, are you willing to start us?
Would be glad to, sir. These can be challenging cases. I was pleased to hear the number of people testifying in support, and I understand the misunderstanding that may have happened with the adjacent neighbor. I think there's a couple things that propel me to grant the variance. I think number one is the location of the tree doesn't necessarily allow a fence to come off the corner of the house. The installation of the door, I think, is critical, and whether or not the door is appropriate doesn't necessarily enter into my equation here, that to include the door within the rear yard makes sense. So I wanted to reiterate appreciate the positive testimonials that we had, that they've done a good job with the renovations, and that the new fence is better than what was there, obviously because it was in a decrepit state. So I'm in favor of granting the variance with a couple conditions, and the first one is that the doors to be installed within 6 months. And then the fence is to be stained, and whether or not it matches, I would be nice that it matched the other fence on the other side of the house or whatnot. But I think we give them a time frame of a month or 2 months to stain this fence. In accordance with their testimony. So I'm in favor of granting the variance request with those conditions, and in accordance with staff's findings as well.
Thank you. I'm sorry, anything else?
No, thank you.
Mr. Shekels.
Yeah, and in my site visit, I believe they'll testify the fact that the existing stockade fence went from that corner where it's tied into the chain link to the house, and I looked at that and I said there's no reason why it couldn't go back there. And initially I was going to suggest that it be turned down. Hearing the discussion about the neighbors and the side door, I'm probably in favor of granting the variance with similar conditions. Knowing you're probably, from what I'm hearing, do you have plans of using a contractor for this, or are you going to do the work yourself? I don't know that. So I would, Steve, give them probably till the end of the year to complete this work, and maybe 2 months to have the fence stained. That's the way I would be leaning right now.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Mr. Sion?
Yeah, echoing somewhat some of the sentiment. I do have a question, though, I'd pose to Mr. Haber and Mr. Shekels, is with regards to making it conditional upon the installation of the door. They weren't planning on a door, and he just made a mistake and put it up there, door or not. I don't know if that would our position change? I understand there's an issue with the tree over there. The neighbor's replacing an old fence, existing fence that basically decayed. So I agree with that. But in terms of making it conditional, is that something that, I guess, what's the end result for staff? I mean, if let's say the door isn't installed, what does that do? They come back to us, or the staff have to go back to them and say, hey, you didn't install this door. There's some questions in my mind as to what that involves.
Paul, my response would be that if there was not a door issue there, I would probably suggest that the fence be relocated. Okay, with the door issue and with the listening to the testimony, I would accept the door and the fence and the location if it was done within, X time frame. So that's where I am.
Mr. Haber, do you want to respond to that right now?
I'm going to ask for Mr. Sion to give me a little bit of clarification there as to what he's either proposing or maybe he can state the question to me. I'm not quite sure I understand.
And I guess let me ask staff. I mean, staff, what's the opinion of staff that if we put this condition on there that this fence is approved, the condition is that that side door be installed within 6 months, by the end of the year? Is that something staff is willing to look at? Is that something that's they're able to do?
I would agree that I think that's somewhat tough to enforce, and I think we would need to have some sort of something built into the condition to say if this didn't happen. I think that would maybe work. But I do have some concerns on enforcement of installing the door as well, and how we.
Yeah, and that's my concern, is that we're inserting something in there, some condition that staff won't necessarily have the ability to enforce, and then, in my opinion, then we're kind of reducing the. I guess I should say reducing. We're changing the parameters here of this situation. While the appellant did mention that there's a possibility they want a door installed there. Time wasn't a question too. It seems like they'd be willing to do that, but at the same time too, we need an actual enforcement mechanism if they don't do that.
Steve Haber here. It was a primary reason why the fence is located where it is. And if the door is not going to be installed, then I may have a different opinion about whether or not I want to grant this variance. So, similar to the earlier case where I mentioned regarding the accessory structure in the front yard, when the house is not constructed within the time frame, there would be a zoning violation. And enforcement, as my understanding is that enforcement then would occur via a zoning violation.
Right. But with that case, it's a little different because an accessory structure located on a property without the house is inherently a zoning violation. And in this situation, we would be approving the variance, and then if the door wasn't installed, I think that the variance would still be approved, and I don't know if it would be a violation.
Well, we often,
I guess that where it would get back to the condition and how it's worded.
Steve Haber here again. I mean, there are a lot of cases where we will put conditions on granting a variance, whether it's substantial conformance to documents within a year to 2 years, or whatever it may be, that I believe are really no different than what we're talking here.
This is PJ Ginty. I want to offer a little bit of clarification from a staff perspective. I guess trying to make sure Brad and I are on the same page as far as how this would be enforced. If the board were to grant this variance with that condition that the door be installed within 6 months, and that door were not installed within 6 months, it'd be my understanding that the variance would then be denied because they couldn't meet that condition. Is that, Brad, is that something you're thinking as well, or?
I guess you're right. I mean, yeah, I guess it would bring it out of compliance at that point because it's not in accordance with the resolution. So,
and as far as enforcement of from a staff perspective, we would be requiring the applicant to install something to their house, and or require them to tear the fence down. Those would be our two enforcement options, I'd say. Brad, does that make sense?
Yes, I think it makes sense.
Mr. Haber, do you have any follow-up questions based on that?
So if I understand it correctly, then if we put a condition on approval of the variance with the installation of the door within a certain time frame, and that time frame comes and goes and the door's not installed, then the fence would be in violation and we would be back right where we are right now.
That's what I'm thinking, because you're approving it with a condition that they do X, Y, Z, and X is install that door.
That's one of the main reasons for the location of the fence.
And I mean, the board is well within its right to make that condition. We're just trying to give you guys a perspective from what the enforcement of that would look like.
It's Paul. I'm a little confused. To me, it's pretty black and white. I mean, we have the power as the board to approve or reject, okay? And if we put a condition on it that this activity must be done by X date, at the end of that date, the question I would want to know then, do we have to have a whole new board hearing and reject the fence, or do you have the ability to just go out and tell them move the fence at that date?
So if the board were to grant this variance request with the condition, it would then authorize staff to enforce that resolution.
Correct. So we wouldn't have to come back and address this issue again.
Unless they,
not that I would object to doing that. I'm just curious. Yeah.
or built the door.
Who was that there? Was that Brad?
Yeah. I said, or if they, so I'm wondering if we approve the variance, it does get constructed within a year, but then a year and 3 months, it does get installed. For those 3 months, it's a violation, but then once it gets installed, then it would bring it into compliance. So yeah, I think the condition would work.
Steve Haber, I mean, it's my understanding that we have a zoning violation in front of us right now.
Yes.
Okay, and they've made application for a variance, and we're putting a condition on it. And if that condition is not met, similar to the other conditions, then the fence is in violation. And if they want to come and get another variance for some reason or whatnot, it better not be because of the door. We're giving them adequate time. 6 months takes it through November, and you're not going to do this in winter. So if they haven't satisfied the conditions of the variance, of granting the variance, then the fence has got to come down and get moved.
Okay. Yep, we can go with that.
And I'm better understanding Mr. Haber's position too, and I would add, I don't think we've had a motion made yet, but I would add that conditional upon the door being installed. If the door is not installed, then we add that condition that the fence be moved back to the appropriate position where it meets the zoning regulations.
So I have a question for you. Looking forward, so let's say they put the door in, and I'm looking at this side photo. You're looking at you see like 3 or 4 feet of the foundation. The door is going to be above that. So then you're going to have a door that overlooks the fence, and then on top of that, what's the requirement to have something outside the door, like a patio or a deck or steps? Does he have to wrap it around to the back? I mean, what kind of expense is he getting into by just putting in that door just because he wants to save the fence? Does that make sense? They can't just put a door there. You'll have a 4-foot drop if you walk out.
Are you asking what would be permitted to be built inside
Yeah,
yard?
what would he have to do if he put the door in to get to the yard? Is it just a set of steps? Is it a deck, or is it some sort of porch?
I mean, that would be up to the app. This is PJ. Sorry. That would be up to the applicant as far as how they were to get down to grade. Now, if they were to put in a deck, they would have to meet the side yard setback for that zoning district, which I can double check on that. Now, as far as patios go, they'd be required to be 3 feet from the side property line.
Okay. So if he just put a stoop off and then steps, like it'd be like 4 or 5 steps down to grade. But then I don't know, that doesn't seem very functional to me to be usable for the backyard. And then on top of that, you've got a door that's 5 feet over the fence. So
that's a good point.
Make it look more silly, huh?
Let me jump in and maybe let's put that back to the applicant and ask them, do you understand that if you put in a door there, you've got to somehow get down to the ground? Obviously, you understand that. Do you have a plan for that? Do you understand that anything you do in that respect is also going to have to comply with the zoning resolution? And do you have something in mind? I'd like to hear that. Not to cut you off, Mr. Lawrence, but maybe let's have them address that question and then return to you.
Mr. Chair, this is Steve Haber. We are in closed session.
I think in the past we have decided we did not need to reopen to question the applicant, but if you'd like to make a motion to reopen the public hearing, I'd certainly entertain it.
Steve Haber, so moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Hold on to the applicants. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
Mr. Shekels.
Aye.
Mr. Haber.
Aye.
Mr. Sion.
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, public hearing is reopened. To the applicant, remind you you're still under oath. The question is, do you have a plan to comply with that? Do you understand that you're still going to have to comply with the zoning resolution and so on? We'd like to hear a little more about that.
Yes, I do have a plan. So currently, on the back of my property or back of the house, we have a concrete patio. And I just recently excavated an area and have installed a hot tub. And my intent is to get a permit for a deck to go around the hot tub. And then my intent was to have a 3-foot section of deck around to the door from that door I was proposing to install.
So Steve Haber here. So like a 4-foot wide walkway or something that would connect that deck to this proposed door?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, basically, if you're looking at the brick and the concrete foundation, basically the deck portion would be at that brick line, and it would wrap around to the concrete patio in the back, and it would go over my walkout basement, and it would be there's a recessed hot tub that it would step into as well. It would have a railing, and that is my intent. I was planning to follow the proper protocol for that, get permit and design submitted.
This property is zone A, so that means that there's a side yard setback of 15 feet. And any deck in the side yard would need a mere 15-foot setback. So, I'm not sure if there's 15 feet there. What was that?
We just couldn't understand what you said. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. The zoning of your property is A, residence, and that means that there's a side yard setback of 15 feet is required, and any deck in the side yard is required to meet that side yard setback of 15 feet.
Okay, so I would have so I have 19 feet from the house to the chain link, So I would have 4 feet to work with for my deck.
As long as it meets the 15 feet. setback.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence, we were discussing your question about what's their plan. You've heard their plan. Additional thoughts or discussion? Back to you.
No, if they have some way to obviously have egress from the house via deck or patio, however they're planning on doing that, that it seems like it makes sense to me. And if it's only a walkway with 4 feet, it seems like it will also meet the criteria that it needs to meet.
I'll weigh in briefly on this, and then I want to turn it back to run through everyone again. When we get requests like this, one of the things that we often talk about in our meetings is what makes this property appropriate for it that doesn't make every property appropriate for it. I think the concern that we all have is that people will get the idea that the sole criterion that governs these things is, well, they put it up in violation and now it's there and we don't want them to make them take it down. And if we start acting as if that's the rule, then suddenly everyone's going to be putting up fences everywhere, and we're not going to have a principled basis on which to either allow or disallow any particular fence. So I come at these trying to think, what about this property makes this particular request appropriate or inappropriate? One of the things that we often discuss as a board is topography. So when I looked at this property, when I was out there on the street, one of the things that jumped out to me is that this fence is quite a bit lower than the street level. Someone walking down the street, I understand not everyone is walking down the street who's affected by this, but someone who's walking down the street sees a fence that's really only, for all practical purposes, something like 2 to 3 feet high. That is very different from a 6-foot fence, practically speaking, I think. The other thing is that this fence, to me, is sufficiently close to the back of the house that it is not really imposing on the neighborhood. The combination of the lowered grade and the fact that it is, 2/3 of the way back to the house isn't quite where it should be, but it looks like much less like a 6-foot fence than it actually is. Those two things combined with the tree would lead me to probably grant this variance, even if there were not a plan to install a door. I'm not sure of that, but when you add in that fourth thing, that they have a plan to install a door, I think those 4 factors are what make this not the ordinary property, and I would grant the variance on that basis. Now, the applicant should understand that come 6 months, because it was their suggestion that 6 months is the right time, they're either going to have a door or they're going to have to move the fence. That's what I'm hearing is the sense of the board. So if the applicant has any additional information that they want to give us on that issue, whether they're not really sure they want to do that, or they have any questions about whether or not they have to have any other options, I guess I'll put it back to them one last time. Do you understand that that is what this condition that we've discussed would require? Do you have anything else you think we need to know before we wrap up our discussion and proceed to a vote that looks like it's heading in that direction?
Yeah, my personal, I think like what makes it different, like a different situation, like you mentioned, would be, and I want the door, and we've discussed the door and plan on putting one in, but I was under the view that the tree was the biggest issue because the roots were pushing on the fence where it was. So we can't put a fence back there because it would just, it would just get ruined like the old one. I guess, yeah, my biggest thing would be the tree. I don't know how we would move it. How we would build a new fence. We couldn't just move it. How we would build a new fence on the same line with that tree there. Because the roots, have grown and stick out of the ground, and they would just keep pushing on it. So that has nothing to do with the door. That was just
Okay.
what I viewed as making this a special case, I suppose.
Understood. Turning it back to the board, Mr. Haber, any additional discussion based on either the applicant's comments or my comments, or what we heard from Mr. Lawrence or staff, since I think you had last had a chance to weigh in?
I'm totally in support and agreement with what you're saying. Is what is site specific about this that provokes us to grant this variance request? And you've added, I think, two more, which is, we always look at topography, but as you're saying that this, that the grade is lower than the street, the tree, replacing the existing fence, the location of the door, I think are all factors that make this a site-specific, that make this variance, that makes granting this variance request acceptable because of those site-specific situations.
Thank you. Anything else?
None.
Mr. Shekels, back to you. Anything else to add?
Nothing. Thank you.
Mr. Sion?
Nothing. Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
No more questions. Thank you.
Okay, I've got nothing else to add. My sense of the board is that we're leaning towards granting it subject to certain conditions. Would anyone like to make a motion?
One other, if I might just ask the clarifications, as I'm a relatively new member. Are we in the business of picking stain colors? Because I don't plan on being in that business.
A fair question.
If the board can condition that or not, to be honest, and I don't think that they are. I don't think they have that authority.
Yeah, I don't see how we could have that authority.
Brad, can I help?
Sure.
The board does not have the authority to pick out colors.
That's what
that was the suggestion, to pick out colors. I think Mr. Haber was suggesting that it just be stained and match the other side.
Yeah.
Mr. Haber can correct me.
No further question. Thank you.
Before we get to that, I guess I'll put it to the applicant, rather than leaving it to us to address that. Are you said you intended to stain it. Are you proposing to include that as a condition in your application? You're saying if you grant this variance, we will stain it a certain color within a certain time?
Yes, the fence will be stained. The color, my wife has, she's always changing colors in the house and outside, and changing the shutter color and stuff like that. So she did tell me that she recently wanted to repaint the fence on the right side. So whatever color we paint it would be the same color to match on that side as well. Because I know she did have an idea to paint the shutters to match the fence. So yeah, it's our 100% intent to paint the fence.
Yeah, I think putting the staining or painting of the fence into the I don't know what you call it, the stipulations variance. Yeah, it totally makes sense, because we were going to do that anyway. I'm just in the middle of picking shutter colors and door color, and like I said, just sent him a picture today of what I was thinking, and we would definitely want both sides of the fence to match. So
I'll put it to you then, since you said yes, that you want to subject yourself to that condition. How much time do you need to get it painted? Whatever color it is, I don't care. Are you saying I'll get it painted by noon tomorrow, by June 1st, by the 4th of July? You tell us.
Again, I would give it at least 6 months. I mean, just with weather and everything, I'll be doing it myself. And so I would say if you can give us the same stipulation in there, that's 6 months to a year. I mean, I'm not going to be staining it in the winter of next year. It would be something where it's done, spring, summer, fall, sometime in that time frame. So I think that.
Okay. So your proposal is, if we grant this application, you're willing to subject yourself to the condition that the door will be installed and the fence will be painted or stained within 6 months?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I would say the fence would definitely be stained in that 6 months. The door, I would say yes, we could get that in there in that six month time frame as well. I just, I mean, again, I'll be doing that myself, so I wouldn't want to commit, say, hey, I'm going to do it next weekend, and something comes up and it rains, bad weather, whatever. I mean, I would need some time to allocate the time and the resources to do it.
Can I say it also honestly makes me the fence doesn't make me uncomfortable at all. That's not a big thing, but the door makes me a little uncomfortable to commit to a 6 month time frame just because of the whole COVID-19 thing and with things being very uncertain. And it does seem like things are going to be opening back up, but then they talk about a new peak, and if things close back up, jobs and things can change. So I do worry about committing to 6 months if, financially something were to change, if that makes sense. So to me, the fence, no problem. That's not a huge cost. It's something we're looking to do in the near future anyway. But yeah, to me, the tree roots pushing on a fence is the biggest thing. I'm afraid to commit to 6 months for with such an uncertain time we're living in.
Okay, understood. With that additional information, I'm going to put it back to the board one more time. Mr. Haber, I'll start with you. You've heard their testimony that they intend and anticipate to do within 6 months. They're not, it sounds like, willing to commit to that themselves. That doesn't necessarily prevent the board from imposing that as a reasonable condition. If we determine it's reasonable, do you have any additional either discussion or questions either for the board or for the applicant?
Thank you. The location, the installation of the door, for their documented submission, was critical in the location of the fence. And here we are, beginning of May, almost mid-May. 6 months gets us to November. And if they're unwilling to commit into 6 months, then the door going in is going to be pushed off until next year. So if they don't want to commit to a door this year, then I'm because of their reasoning for the location of the fence, if they're unwilling to commit to the door, then I'm probably going to take a different tactic when it comes to granting this current variance request. And I do that only because it says in their written testimony, the reason for this is that my intent to install a side door and wanted to have that door open out to the fenced-in backyard. So my position is they do it this year, or then the reason that this fence has been installed where it is moot. And that's where I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Understood. Mr. Shekels, any additional discussion?
No, I'm as similar as Steve. I mean, we either commit to a plan to have it installed this year and keep the fence in place, or if it's 6 months comes, they're going to have to move the fence if the door's not in.
Right. Mr. Sine?
Nothing further.
Mr. Lawrence?
I have one quick question. Is the remodeling on the interior of the house finished? Is the kitchen / dining room done?
I started my remodel. It was last spring break. We tore up all the hardwood floors, redid that. I've been installing all the kitchen myself. Countertops just got installed in October. It's been a slow kitchen remodel. I just wrapped up the electric portion of it. I am still in the process of doing drywall work inside. I mean, it's close. It's in the home stretch, but but it's yeah, I mean, it is still going on.
Basically, it's almost done. The only things that are left are the drywall work, painting, and backsplash.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is it far enough along to where you are able to put the door in? It's not like there's cabinets on that wall, and for you to put the door in, you'd have to rip all the cabinets off to put a hole in the wall.
Yeah, I can show you exactly which wall it's going, and there's nothing on that wall. Basically, our intent was to have a pantry, door, and then we have an eat-in banquette. So I mean that is my intent.
Okay, that was kind of my question. I was like, I didn't know if you were in the middle of the remodel, and then all of a sudden that's what's holding you back. That's why you're hesitating on the 6-month timeline. Because you had to do major stuff inside. That's all the questions I had.
Yeah, the major stuff is done.
Yeah, we're in the home stretch.
There's one other thing that I wanted to mention as well. Any interior innovations in the installation of the door would all need to comply with the Hamilton County Building Department. Everybody to be aware of that.
What was that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
We couldn't hear you.
Interior improvements or the installation of the door would need to comply with the Hamilton County Building Department. I just wanted everybody to be aware of that.
Correct.
Okay, we've heard from Mr. Haber and Mr. Shekels and Mr. Sine and Mr. Lawrence. I think we've exhausted the discussion at this point. Is anybody prepared to make a motion?
Motion.
Mr. Chair, we are still in the public hearing portion.
Move to close it? That's a motion.
So I'm going to move to close it. I'm going to move to close the public hearing.
This is Paul Sine. I second the motion.
Mr. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
This is PJ Ginty. Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
Mr. Shekels.
Aye.
Mr. Haber.
Aye.
Mr. Sion. Mr. Nye.
Aye. Okay, public hearing is closed. We have been deliberating in and out of the public hearing. I think no additional discussion is necessary. I think it is time to get down to brass tacks. Is someone prepared to make a motion?
Steve Haber here, Mr. Chair, regarding case number 10-2020 BZA. I move that we grant a variance request to allow a 6-foot high privacy fence in the side yard of the property. I'm going to cite and include in my motion staff testimony, staff's findings. We are granting the variance request due to the location of the tree within the off the corner of the house, that the topography is a couple feet lower than the road, so that it is site specific, and 2 conditions: that the door that the appellant has indicated is the reason for the location of the fence is to be installed within 6 months, and the fence will be stained and match the other fence on the other side, other end of the house, that also would be accomplished within 6 months. I think that's it.
Any either discussion of or a second to that motion? Hearing none, I would say only that I would second it, except that I don't think I would require that the staining necessarily match. If they want to stain the fence 2 different colors, I wouldn't care about that. I would suggest we modify the motion in that way, and if we did, I would second it.
I'm acceptable to that. And as chair, are you allowed?
This note here that was intended for John Halpin says I knew it. This is my first one. I don't know.
You're doing a great job.
Excellent job, sir. Excellent job.
Okay, so Mr. Haber, you modify your motion as such. Okay. Does anyone else wish to be heard on that before we have a second? Does anyone else want to second it, or is it just me?
I'll second it.
Second. Okay, we got a motion and a second. Staff, do you need a clarification before we call the roll?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, so as I understand it, the motion is to grant the variance and the basis for the decision, including the location of the tree, the topography of the land, the relative proximity of the fence to the rear of the house, even though it's not all the way in the rear. We would grant it subject to the conditions that the door referenced by the applicants in their testimony be installed within 6 months of today, and that the fence be stained within 6 months of today.
Steve Haber here. I believe that's an adequate restatement of the motion.
There is a motion and a second, so whenever the secretary is ready, please call the roll.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Haber?
Aye.
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye. Okay, case 10 is resolved. We are then on to the 11th and penultimate item on our agenda, which is the decision and journalization of case 13-2019 BZA, which was from many months ago, and I barely remember it.
Also, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to head off since your public hearings are closed. Brad, I'll give you the host duties back.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah. See you.
Good working with you again.
This is Paul Delara. Can I interrupt real quick with a question?
Oh, hey, Mr. Delara, how are you?
Well, I'm late. I've been here listening for an hour and a half, and I did hear a reference that you guys had already discussed from one of Mr. Haber's comments, and I do apologize. I didn't set an alarm. I didn't think about it until 6:30 when I logged on. If it's appropriate, can somebody explain to me if anything happened or how I should handle the situation I put myself in?
Yeah, thanks for coming in. I'm sorry you've been sitting there for so long. We didn't know. This is Jeff.
No, that's all right. You guys did business
today. Because you were not here, we elected to continue the matter until next month's hearing.
Great. Okay. I appreciate that. Sorry to have wasted your time tonight with whatever discussion you had. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you. We'll talk to you next month, I hope.
Great. Appreciate it, guys. Good night.
All right. Poor guy. All right. Brad.
Yes.
Case 13. Are we just on to journalization of?
Yes. Now we're just on to
Mr. Kennard, you don't have to stick around for this. I don't think. I don't know who else might be on the line. I think at this point, you're welcome to. I don't think you have to. We're going to review the resolutions, sign off on them, and so on.
Okay.
Unless you have any other questions for us.
The only question is, so it sounded like the variance was granted, but that you guys will send something in the mail stating that based on the stipulations that you.
Yes. So tonight, what's going to happen is the board will approve a resolution for the case, and then once the resolution is signed by the secretary and the chair, we will then issue the zoning certificate for it, and we will send you the zoning certificate.
Okay, great. Thank you all. I appreciate it, and have a great evening.
Thanks, Ben. 13.
Are there still two folks on the line?
Yes, it appears so.
Anyone else still on the line with us? Okay.
Working to get the resolution, so 1 second. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay. So again, this is one, case 15. You guys are ready.
I look back at my notes and remember this one. I'm okay to scroll. Okay.
Brad, if you could just align the chairman signature line. There we go.
That looks correct to me.
It looks good to me too.
Steve Haber here, Mr. Chair, regarding case 13-2000. Wait a minute, up there at the top where it says case 13- regarding case -13 2019 BZA, I move that we approve and journal our decision.
I'll sign a second motion.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Shekels,
Aye.
Mr. Haber,
Aye.
Mr. Sion,
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye. Case 13 is down. Last item is the decision and journalization of today's cases.
So we could just do case 6 now, I think. We can just continue that one.
Right.
Yeah, case 8. Is there a motion to continue case 6?
Do we need another one? Didn't we have one about 3 hours ago?
That was the straw vote. We just need, this is
Anybody want to move to continue case 6?
This is Paul Sign.
Go ahead, Paul.
It's Paul Sign. I make a motion to continue case 6-2020 BZA.
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please.
And just for clarification, I had Mr. Shekels on the second.
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Shekels,
Aye.
Mr. Haber,
Aye.
Mr. Sion,
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Thank you.
move on to case 8.
Case 8. In the third line, there is the last word of the third line, variance.
Oh, yeah.
to allow, I don't know how to reword that, but I know it's not right.
Requesting a variance to allow.
I think you can take out allow variance, requesting a variance to construct.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, to allow variance, yeah. I think I would reword 4 to say that the owner's predicament cannot be feasibly obviated through some method other than variance because of, or take out however, cannot be feasibly obviated through the other method other than a variance. Take out however, due to the very steep slope of a creek. And then I guess we have to change it. Due to that, locating the garage in the rear yard would require extensive grading and clearing of the property. I think that probably reads better. Does that sentence make sense?
Cannot feasibly obviate.
How about all located in the rear yard of the property, period? Looking at the garage. Does that make more sense?
I think it does.
Looks
Looks good.
Yep.
Construction be started within a year and completed within 2 years. We good to go? Mr. Chair, regarding case 8-2020, I move that we approve and journal our decision.
This is Paul Sign. I second the motion.
Will the secretary call roll?
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Shekels,
Aye.
Mr. Haber,
Aye.
Mr. Sion,
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Thank you. May 7th.
Where'd you borrow that resolution from?
Yeah.
On a request for conditional use and variances, plural.
So it was, and we were kind of struggling with this one when we were writing the staff report. So it's a variance to just one condition.
And that's the location of the building and not the parking lot.
So it's the location and parking lot. That's all in one condition.
All in
Technically
one.
requesting both though, so that's fine. I just wanted to.
I think it can go either way.
Yeah.
I'm ready to scroll whenever. Sentence 3. Proposed adult daycare center will respect natural, scenic, and historic features.
Yeah.
Of significant interest. I think I did change that. Insignificant.
What now?
Is that the right phrasing?
Yeah, it's kind of throwing me off there.
What does the
it just
Natural, scenic, and historic features of significant public interest.
is that
What-
language of the resolution?
Yeah, what
Historic
historic
features of significant public. Oh, yeah. Okay, I guess it is. Yeah. I'm good.
This language is directly from the staff report,
That's correct.
and I'm good with that.
Yeah. Well, do we want to put staff's conclusions in the resolution here? Or do we just want to say in the conditions section, provide the parking plan, provide the lighting plan, or whatever?
You could do
Does it say right before this, the bottom of page 1? What's the one?
What about the bottom of page 1?
I was just trying to remember how we got here.
Want to keep the staff findings in here or get rid of them?
I mean, I think my inclination would be to rephrase this to say something like, with respect to the criteria in 5.4 I5 or whatever, will be addressed by variance below. Hold on, don't type. I don't want to make you type a whole lot before we get sense of it here. Hold on, let's skip E for a second. Should we say maybe starting at the top of the page? The board concludes that conditions 5.4 I5G J, whatever else they are satisfied, and the ones that aren't satisfied, then we can address in separate paragraphs after that. Does that make sense?
So the staff recommended conditions. Sorry, we're meant to satisfy those other ones. I think we're getting at the same thing, Jeff.
Okay, so how do we treat E and H down below? I shouldn't try to edit this without knowing the rest of it says, right? If all this is from the staff report, I think it's fine so far as it goes. What do we say after that?
At the end?
Yes, at the end.
Oh, yeah, now I got to take that all out. I'm sorry. That's why nobody should listen to me.
We have to. You're the chair.
For one night only.
Do we want to get to the bottom of these? Is that what you
Here we go. There's the conditions, or there's the variance. Yeah,
These are findings for the variance.
And as approved by staff. Oh, that's I. That's I. Okay, never mind. Forget I had that conversation.
Can what are the other conditions down at the bottom of the next page? These are again straight out of the recommended conditions. Okay. I guess all I would say is that at the top of page, we kind of pick up in the middle of a sentence. Can we add something that says something like, with respect to the specific criteria, the board makes the following findings. The building does not comply, but the board determines a variance is appropriate as discussed below. G, the applicant complies. H, doesn't comply, but we're granting a variance. J, the applicant comply. I think we should be making specific findings, right?
Yes.
Is that what we're doing here?
Yes. Do we want to go through each one and we could reword, or do you want to try to set here?
Say again.
You want to? Would you like that wording to be with where the bold is now, or like you said, start another area up here where we go through each one?
Oh, sorry, right at the top. Before, see where it says specific criteria in Article 5.4 I5? Before that, with respect to the specific criteria, the board makes the following findings. Is everyone with me on this, or am I just talking out the wazoo here? I think we can say, the application is in compliance with requirements G, J, N, R, and Y. Why? Because we like you. GJ. G is in golf.
Yeah. No, Brad.
Not E.
There. Yeah, not
because they're not in compliance with E. We're going to give them a variance, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So back up on the first line again. If anyone else wants to jump in and do this instead, feel free. With respect to the specific criteria in Article 5.4 I5, the board makes the following findings.
The following findings, applications are compliant with all
Okay.
rules. Okay.
So far, so good, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then we can say, with respect to 5.4 I5E, not in compliance, but the board grants the variance described below.
Yeah, because then we go down to the we have findings then for the variances. So Brad, it'd be more than just E.
But that's true. Right. So E, what are they? E H, EHI, P. Oh no, P. Not P. We're not granting a variance there. We're just requiring a condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So EHI, EH and I are the variances, and then P and S are not in compliance, but are subject to the conditions that they submit plans that are in compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's right.
so how do we make this?
With respect to 5.4 I5 EHI, the application is not in compliance, but the board grants variances as described below. What happened there?
Space. No.
And then the other ones are with respect to H. I'm sorry, not H. P and S.
Those will be submitted to staff.
Yeah, the board has imposed conditions as described below.
Which letters are these? I'm sorry.
How do we say that? P and S. I think, what do we say? The applicant is directed to submit conforming plans to staff as described below or something.
Mm-hmm.
Conditions?
I think that probably does it.
Yeah, I would agree.
But before you delete all that stuff, Europe, what are you doing here?
Throwing in some Greek letters.
Word automatically does it.
Oh.
There's got to be a better way.
Every time we like upgrade our software at my office, it revert. Like I have to undo all those. I have to revert all the automatic, see, like inserts the copyright symbol. I'm like, I got to get that out of there. It's the worst.
Yeah.
First world problems, right?
It is.
Okay. Don't delete any of that yet, just to be careful. Let's go down and make sure we got the variances right and the conditions right. And then you can come back and delete all this. Okay. So we should spell out here specifically, unless we did it all already up above, grant a variance from the requirement of 5.4 I5 E and I forgot what it is now. H.
E.
E, H, and I.
E, H, and I. Yeah. These are setbacks and parking. To grant variances from the requirements of E, H, and I for the following reasons.
I'm sorry, I'm not following. Where does this need to go?
Third line there, to grant the variance, take out the. To grant variances from the requirements of Article 5.4 I5. E, H, and I. Okay. I think we. Okay, wait, back to the first question. Is this one variance or is this multiple variants?
Well, it's clearly multiple now.
Yeah, I think it probably is. So now we have to go back into part one. The variances are right. No. Just
yeah.
Right where you were. The next item was line 1.
Up here?
No, go down, page 3. Keep going. Yeah, right here. 1, the variance is not substantial. I think we have to say, are we doing this once for all the variances, or do we have like 3 of this same language?
I think we can do it all in one.
Just do one.
Is that how it's written right now? Like what's on page 4? I don't know.
Yes, this is all in one.
Yeah,
okay, then change it to plural. There on page 3. Variances are not substantial.
I see. Okay.
You with me?
Yes.
Because of the existing vegetation.
So Brad, variances are not substantial. ARE.
Why else were the variances not substantial? Because the building's already existing, partly.
Yeah, and that's where it talks about in number 2.
Yeah, okay. In 3, variances plural again. I think we're getting there.
There's plural variances, number 2, second line.
Yep. Okay. 4. Let's take out staff is of the opinion that, let's just say, the spirit and intent would be observed. Again, second line variances plural. I think that's all probably right. And then the variances are hereby granted, subject to the following conditions. Okay. I feel good about this.
There's one more. The variances are hereby granted.
Or that is.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Okay. I feel good about this, except now you can go back and delete all that stuff on page 2 or 3 that was copied out of the report. Right? Do we agree? Before he hits delete, does everyone agree?
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
I second that.
Do you think we could move these below this?
I think you could. Yeah. Those 3 lines right there, specific criteria. I think you could take out what is now at the top of the page altogether if you wanted, but
like that.
Let's leave that in.
Sure, fine. Yeah.
Do you want a double space between those, between the last one and being fully advised?
I think this one's great. Do you guys agree?
You got some weird line break on there. I mean, this looks good to me. What do you guys think?
Looks good.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to approve it?
So moved. Paul Simon.
Is there a second?
Second, Steve.
Mr. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Shekels,
Aye.
Mr. Sion,
Aye.
Mr. Haber,
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that concludes our agenda.
We have
one more, I think.
One more.
Oh, do we?
Haven.
I thought that was it. You guys are killing me.
We have Deer Haven left.
Oh yeah, this one that we spent an hour on. Holy cow. Okay. Can we add to finding one, the fence is located 2 to 3 feet below street level?
Yes.
Okay.
What do we mean by similar area in comment 2? Because it's actually about 8 to 10 feet away from there.
It's similar in some sense.
Side yard.
We can take that out. Wait, finding 2? Oh, similar area.
How about it replaced a, well, let me think.
Since we have a contentious neighbor, I don't want to put anything in there that would indicate that wasn't what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we relied on that in any of our discussions, did we?
I didn't, but at the same time, I don't want to leave any exposure there. So I was saying something that could be.
So if we didn't, if it wasn't the reason for the approval, then wait it. Or,
We could take it out. That's an.
Yeah, I think I'd take that out.
okay.
Because that wasn't really a part of our decision.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, then yeah, that's fine.
So then,
Yeah, then the new fence, start right there. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Some other method other than, or is it just me reading that weird?
You could take out one of the others.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Either one.
Are we done with the
said
agenda?
anything about the tree. Oh wait, the tree's on.
Hey, Brad?
Yeah.
Are we done with the agenda tonight?
This is the last thing on the agenda.
Please?
This is the last thing on the agenda.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm good.
Here's where we need to add some.
Following conditions.
Yeah. So
It's substantial. For what plans?
well, there's a sketch.
It doesn't matter compliance with plans, it's already installed.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, it's existing.
Yeah, a door to be installed on the side of the house. You take number 1 out.
Do you want to leave it in because like he had a particular profile, where it kind of slopes down toward the back, and if he wanted to extend it, it otherwise says 6 feet.
Right. The only thing that concerned me is the word plans. That's all.
Why don't we say sketch?
Okay. All right.
Is that what we'd call it, sketch, or even photos?
I think we should. I kind of think we should call it plan.
We always just leave that as one of the conditions.
Okay.
It just holds.
Because we always do something doesn't mean it's right, PJ.
Well, it just holds them to what was put on the paper.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
I can't tell at this point.
Doors to be installed on the side of the house.
6 months. Yeah.
I want to say
6 months of passage, or whatever, how you word that.
Approval.
Say by November 7th.
Sufficient. Yep. 6 months of this decision.
Yeah.
And then the staining, we can't say stain and paint because the resolution only said stain. Hey,
did we
I actually pay attention. I know you.
All right.
You thought I was sleeping through half of it, but. Oh, Brad or PJ, I'm available here for signatures if you want to run this over.
6 months
We're all
of
sitting in the printer. If you want to run.
Darn.
6 months.
Okay, we're good on this one.
Well, that looks pretty good to me. Looks good.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
We need a motion, guys.
Motion to approve and journalize. Is that 10 BZA 2020?
Is there a second?
Steve Haber, second.
Mr. Simon moves. Mr. Haber seconds. Please call the roll.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Shekels?
Aye.
Mr. Haber?
Aye.
Mr. Sion?
Aye.
Mr. Nye?
Aye. All right, that completes our agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
So
moved.
Jeff
Yeah.
and Paul, I guess, Jeff, since you were the chairman for this meeting, you and Paul will need to come in and sign the minutes or the resolutions at some point when you guys can.
Right. Well,
And the minutes too.
and then the minutes that were approved as well.
Sure.
Once again, this month I'll be buying beers afterwards for everybody who didn't vote for me for secretary.
I'll come by tomorrow and sign it.
Great. We'll leave it in a folder up front.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
There's a motion to adjourn in a second. Do I need to call the roll on that?
Mr.
No,
Lawrence?
right?
I don't know.
It says here, now that I've finally read this whole thing that you put together for John, I don't have to do that. It says I can, consent motions are
Anyway.
acceptable, preferred as time savers. We could have been doing that all day.
Yeah.
All right, there's a second. It's unanimous. We're adjourned, I'd say.
Jeff, great job.
Yeah, good job running the meeting, Jeff.
Jeff,
Good job.
happy to do it.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining via WebEx. I know this isn't the best, but I think it worked pretty effectively.
It was a fun night. We're all on the fence.
Yeah.
Except for my static. I don't know what was going on with that.
Yeah, that was weird.
Just for next month's meeting, I'd like you to send out a note from the township requiring me to have an 80-inch flat panel on my wall.
That's our tax money paying for your TV.
Really?
Reimbursable expense, I think.
See you guys.
All right.
Hey, guys.
See ya.
Hey,
Thank
Brad,
you.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Brad.
Thank you.
Hey, Brad. Do I send PJ an email to sign in? Is that what it is?
I think we got it. We can sign you in.
Please?
You don't need to send an email about things.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot for your help. I appreciate
No problem. Thank you for joining us.
it. We'll see you.
All right, bye.